It is the summer of 1989. Japan is at the peak of the economic bubble. Tokyo is one of the richest, safest cities on earth. Crime is virtually non-existent. Parents let their children walk to school alone. Kindergarteners ride the subway by themselves. It is a country where trust is the default setting. And then a father decides to check on his daughter at the park. What he finds when he gets there will unravel one of the most disturbing cases in Japanese history. A case the government tried to suppress. A case that changed how an entire generation saw the people living next to them. His name was Tsutomu Miyazaki, and by the time Japan figured out what he was, it was already too late for 4 little girls. To understand what Tsutomu Miyazaki became, you have to understand what Tsutomu Miyazaki was. He was born on August 21, 1962, in Itsukaichi, a quiet town in the Tokyo suburbs. His family was middle class. His father ran a printing company. On paper, the Miyazaki household was ordinary, but Tsutomu was not. He was born with a rare deformity. His wrists were fused directly to his hands. He could not rotate them, could not flex them properly. The simplest tasks required visible effort. Other children noticed immediately, and children, as they often do, were not kind about it. He was mocked constantly. The boy who moved his hands wrong. He learned early that the safest place was away from people. He retreated to his grandfather's house. Shokichi Miyazaki was the one person in his life who treated him as fully human. They spent hours together. The old man never commented on his hands, never stared, just talked to him like he mattered. Tsutomu idolized him completely. In high school, VHS tapes entered his life. Horror movies, manga, anime. He began collecting obsessively, not casually, but with a consuming intensity that alarmed anyone who noticed it. Eventually, his collection would reach 5,763 tapes. He barely graduated. He was rejected from college. He went to work at his father's print shop, where colleagues ignored him and treated him as a liability. Every year, he grew more isolated, more invisible, and then in 1987, the one person he loved died. His grandfather Shokichi passed away. Something inside Miyazaki broke that did not go back together. What happened next is something that Japanese officials would spend years trying to explain away. What they never accounted for was this: there had been signs, and nobody had seen them, or maybe nobody had wanted to. August 22nd, 1988. Mari Kono was 4 years old. She had just started kindergarten. She liked drawing. Her favorite color was red. She had a gap in her front teeth that made her smile look enormous. That afternoon, she was playing near her home in Hano City, Saitama Prefecture. It was late summer. The air still held heat. There was nothing unusual about the street, the weather, the neighborhood. She never came home. Her family reported her missing immediately. Police began a search. Days became weeks. No leads, no clear suspects. In a country with one of the lowest abduction rates in the world, the case felt like a nightmare that had no explanation. It would get worse. Because 40 days after Mari disappeared, Miyazaki sent her family a package. Inside were her remains, her teeth, her charred bones, and alongside them a handwritten note. The note contained words that no grieving parent should ever receive. It was taunting, deliberate. He was not hiding what he had done. He was announcing it. On October 3rd, 1988, he abducted Masami Yoshizawa. She was 7 years old. On December 12th, 1988, Erika Namba, 4 years old, found in a garage 11 days after going missing. By the time Ayako Nomoto, 5 years old, disappeared on June 6, 1989, the entire region was in a state of quiet terror. Parents stopped letting children walk alone. Schools began escorting students. The police had nothing concrete, but escalating killers always make mistakes. On July 23, 1989, a father was at a park in Hachioji, Tokyo. He saw a man crouching near his young daughter. Something about the man's posture was wrong. The way he was positioned, the camera in his hand. The father confronted him. Miyazaki ran, but he came back to retrieve his car, and when he did, police were waiting. the most dangerous serial killer in modern Japanese history, was arrested trying to collect his vehicle. He showed no emotion, no panic, no remorse. He simply looked at the officers and waited. What investigators found inside his home was disturbing enough to delay the official report. 5,763 VHS tapes, catalogued with terrifying precision. Shelves upon shelves, floor to ceiling, labeled and organized. Among them his own recordings, footage he had taken himself. Police also found the preserved remains of one of his victims. He had kept them. He had, in some cases, consumed parts of them. Forensic investigators described the scene as one of the most methodical they had ever encountered. Not chaotic, organized, intentional. The media got hold of the story within days, and what they chose to focus on was the tapes, the anime, the manga, the horror films. Within weeks, headlines across Japan had constructed a narrative. Miyazaki was what happened when young men consumed too much anime. He was proof that otaku culture was producing monsters. And here is where the case becomes something larger than one killer. There were hundreds of thousands of otaku in Japan. Young people who collected manga and watched anime, who were isolated by an education system that punished difference, who built worlds inside their bedrooms because the world outside did not want them. None of them did what Miyazaki did, but overnight they became suspects. Some were fired from jobs after co-workers discovered their hobbies. An entire community was made to answer for the crimes of one man, and in doing so, Japan successfully redirected the conversation away from the only question that actually mattered: what created him? The trial did not begin until March 30th, 1990. His defense argued that Miyazaki suffered from severe personality disorder and had acted under the influence of a second identity he called Ratman. During proceedings, he was unpredictable, sometimes completely still for extended periods, other times muttering things that made no linear sense. He drew pictures in his notes instead of writing. He referred to himself in the third person. The court ultimately ruled that regardless of any psychological conditions, Miyazaki had understood what he was doing. He had planned each abduction. He had selected victims deliberately. He was accountable. On April 14, 1997, Tsutomu Miyazaki was sentenced to death. He appealed twice. Both appeals were denied. While he sat in detention awaiting execution, he began writing diaries. Hundreds of pages. Some were articulate descriptions of his childhood, his grandfather, his isolation. Other pages were fragments, images without narrative. Researchers who studied them later described a man who seemed to genuinely not understand why what he had done was wrong. Not because he lacked intelligence, but because somewhere along the way, the part of him that was supposed to connect to other human beings had simply stopped developing. The warning signs had been there for years. Nobody had acted on them. On June 17, 2008, Tsutomu Miyazaki was executed by hanging at the Tokyo detention house. He was 45 years old. No final statement was recorded. No apology was issued. Mari Kono would have been 24. Masami Yoshizawa, 26. Erika Namba, 23. Ayako Nomoto, 24. Think about that. Think about who they might have been. No memorial was built. The national conversation moved on. Monsters do not come from cartoons or horror movies. They come from loneliness that goes too long without being seen, from grief with no outlet, from systems that produce isolation and are surprised when isolation produces damage. Miyazaki was failed before he ever failed anyone else. That does not make him innocent. It does not excuse a single one of his crimes, but it means that somewhere, right now, there is a boy who is invisible, who eats lunch alone, who comes home to an empty house and fills it with something, anything, that makes him feel less alone. And the question that this case left unanswered, the one that Japan never wanted to have, is what we owe that boy before the damage is done. The Tsutomu Miyazaki case is officially closed, but the diaries were never fully published. The psychological evaluations were sealed by court order. Criminologists who have requested access to the full case files are still waiting. Japan wanted to forget him. The problem with forgetting cases like this is that forgetting them does not make them impossible to repeat. Next week, we open a new file. A man in Germany who sold something to his neighbors, something they bought and consumed without asking where it came from. Until next time, the files stay open. If you made it this far, you already know this channel is different. No filler, no recycled stories. Just the cases that history tried to bury, told the way they deserve to be told. If that is what you are looking for, subscribe. Every week, a different country, a different name, a different crime that the world was never supposed to know about. The next case is already waiting.